Oh, I think we're starting. Welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. Now, I got a question about typical real estate commissions for both residential and commercial property. So it's different everywhere. So I can tell you that most of the country, right, where prices are lower, 6% is a standard commission. There are guys who get away with 7 or 8%. It's always negotiated, but what's typical? In my area, typical is 4 or 5% in Long Island. If you listen to me, I usually charge less, but that's a whole nother story. Now, for commercial, it's always negotiated, and it depends on the size of the deal. So, there are guys who do monster deals. They do, billion-dollar deals. They're going to negotiate a commission of, let's say, $5 million, a flat fee. It's different every time. For a smaller deal, I think it's like 3.5%, 4%. I know I listed a commercial property once. I think it was 3.5% or 4%. And the way commissions work, a lot of people don't understand this, is that the listing agent is going to negotiate a larger commission, and very often the buyer is going to be represented by an agent, and if the buyer is represented by an agent, that agent is going to get typically half the commission. So a typical deal in Long Island, the residential deal would be, the listing agent is listing it for 4%, the buyer's agent comes in and gets half of that, 2%. That's a typical situation. But it's always negotiable. So what I see happen all the time, and I hate when this happens, and it happens a million times, is that somebody calls a realtor that is related to them, or is their friend, or is their relative's friend, or is their friend's relative, and they go there and they bring a listing agreement, and they just don't negotiate, right? Because they feel bad. So the agreement says 6% commission, and it says you're going to list it for a year. If you told me you signed an agreement in Long Island or anywhere in downstate New York for 6% for a year, I tell you you're out of your mind, right? That's a terrible, terrible, terrible listing agreement. Okay, it's not typical commission. You're paying too much, and it's way too long. So the kind of BS you'll hear from the agents, especially agents who don't know what they're doing, is something like, "Well, my broker won't let me charge less," or "My broker won't let me take it for less time." If an agent ever tells you something like that, you should say, "You know what? I'm going to look into this," and never ever call that agent back again. I don't care if it's your mother. I don't care if it's your brother. Because any agent worth his weight in crap should be able to put commissions down to where it's competitive, and should be able to take a listing agreement for less than a year. I mean, it should be able to take it for 3 or 4 months, right? I never take a listing agreement more than 3 months. If I can't get it sold in 3 months, then I'm happy to let you go somewhere else. And all you have to do in those 3 months is get it under contract. I'm not required to have it sold. As long as I'm under contract, and there's usually a provision for it to take longer than the time if it doesn't close in time, because sometimes closing takes a long time. But this crap that my broker won't let me do, it just indicates someone who has no pull, no gravitas, probably no experience, just a waste of time. Just a waste. So that's typical for the area. I mean, I can't tell you how many people call me and say, "Hey, I'm listed with this person who's doing a terrible job." And I'm like, "Okay, you got to get out of that listing agreement if you want me to list it for you." And they're like, "I feel bad. I don't tell them. Can't we just wait 3 months?" And I'm like, that's not the smart move. So you want shorter listing agreements so that if things don't go the way you want to, you can switch to another realtor. You do not want to pay more than what's typical, and it's relatively easy to figure out what's typical. You could ask any realtor, "Hey, what's typical in this area? Look at the last 10 deals that sold. What was the commission agreement?" The commission agreement is perfectly available to anybody who's licensed. You can see what was paid. So you ask, right? And you make decisions based on what's typical in the area, right? You don't want to pay more, and you don't want to list for a long time, right? Getting locked up for a year is ridiculous, right? It's embarrassing, right? If you sign that, I'd say you're cruising for a bruising, because what are the possibilities, right? Ideally, you're going to go into contract right away, right? Within a month or two. That's what everybody wants, right? So if that happens, what the hell do you need a 1-year listing for, right? Now, let's say things go bad. At that point, you probably want to move to another realtor, or you want to take it off the market. But you don't want to have a listing there for 11 months. If I'm a buyer and I look and see a listing there for 11 months, I am already thinking, what's wrong with the property? What the hell is going on? What am I missing? That's what I'm thinking, right? If something's listed for a month, maybe, anything can happen. 2 months, anything can happen. But you got a listing on there for 7 months, I'm like, something's freaky here, right? Right? And then you're going to usually get BS stories, and I've told them sometimes, of how, we added something in contract and it fell through, blah, 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 blah. But guess what? It's usually not true, right? It's usually that it was priced too high, you had a crappy realtor, wasn't holding open houses, wasn't showing the property, wasn't telling you, wasn't communicating. So that's more likely what happened. So you have to be very careful. You should never, ever, ever list a property with a relative or a friend, or a relative's friend or a friend's relative. Ever. Right? If there's any hesitation in your thinking that I can go back to this guy and say, I want to be released from this. Now, not withdrawn. There's 2 ways to get out of a listing agreement. You can withdraw or you can be released. You want to be released. Released means the guy has no more claims on you, right? Because what jerk agents might do is you withdraw. 2 months later, you find the buyer, and that agent goes, I think that guy came to an open house. You owe me commission. You don't want that. You don't want to get into litigation with some moron, because let's be honest, most realtors close 1 deal a year, right? And think about all the realtors that do real business, and all these people. There's a lot of people do no deals a year, right? Part-time, housewives, guy who is in the mortgage business who became a realtor. That's what happens. And most of these guys don't know what they're doing. They have no product knowledge. They have no negotiation skill. They don't know what they're doing. And you are likely to get stuck with somebody like that if you use a relative, friend's relative, or relative's friend. That's what you're likely. So I would always avoid that. I know sometimes it's tricky. Your sister's a realtor. She sold the house once every 5 years. You're going to list your house. She's expecting you to list with her. Sometimes you got to bite the bullet and do it, but I would say that you should always avoid that if you can, because if it's somebody very close to you, the 2 main problems are they may feel like this is a layup and they don't have to really work that hard. They may feel like they don't have to communicate that well, and you may feel like it's impossible to terminate that relationship, and you don't want to be there. And if I didn't speak to 100 people a year in that situation, I wouldn't be warning you about it. But you should be very, very, very worried when you use someone who really doesn't know what they're doing, and you are going to feel fuzzy or funny or bad about them, about terminating the relationship. That's really the whole thing of not going into business with family, because business relationships go bad all the time. Right? I broke up with a partner a few years ago, and if it's family, then there's always that bad taste in the mouth when you got to see them, you got to speak, their spouse. It's a mess. I was in a family business back in '94, and we were in a crappy industry. We were in the schmata business, garment industry, and it was a bad business. And then there was family issues. So if there weren't family issues, maybe we could have got through the business issues, and if there weren't business issues, then we would have got through the family issues. But it was just a big mess. So avoid that, and avoid that when you go into the business relationship of listing your property. So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com or howtoflipandwholesale.com. If you are interested, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any media channel, please click the thumbs up. The likes really help the algorithm and let a lot more people see my videos. So thank you very much for everybody that's been clicking thumbs up. Please keep the comments coming. I post 5 times a week. I almost never know what I'm going to talk about. I go through the comments. I look for questions. Your questions help me, give me food for thought for future recordings and answering your questions, which is the whole point of this channel, which is to answer your questions. So please keep the questions coming. You do not have to ask a question about the video you watch. It can be about anything. And if it's something simple, I'll just reply with an answer. If it's something I've covered recently, I'll send you a link to a video or multiple videos on it if it was recent. And if it's something I've never covered before, I haven't covered in a long time, I will do a brand new video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching.